Here at Plaquemines Pharmacy, we offer more than just filling prescriptions. We have flu shots and most other vaccines. We offer flu tests and strep tests. We have limited mail service and delivery service. And we offer a comprehensive review of all of your medications. Your health is most important to us. Plaquemines Pharmacy is here for you.
All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Michelle Herbert. I'm the 2019 chairwoman for the Plaquemines Association of Business and Industry. I'd like to welcome everyone here for our candidates forum for State Representative District 105 and Sheriff. Thank you all for being here this evening. We appreciate your interest and commitment to our community. Before we get started, I'd like to thank School Board Superintendent Dennis Roussel and Belle Chasse High School Principal, Ms. Carlone, for allowing us use of the auditorium. Our moderator, past PABI Chairman and current board member, Mr. Reed McClellan. Our timekeeper, Mr. Scott Morris. Mr. Dustin Heimel for the PA system and stage lighting. The candidates for not only attending tonight, but for offering yourself for public service. And last, but certainly not least, I'd like to thank our public officials in attendance this evening. This evening's candidate forum is being moderated by Mr. Reed McClellan. Reed is a certified financial planner and limited partner with Edward Jones Investments in Belle Chasse. He has been a financial advisor for 23 years, and before that worked in the agriculture industry. He is a charter member of PABI, serving as chairman in 2012, and has served on the board for many years. Reed has been a member of the Belle Chasse Lions Club for 16 years and has held the offices of secretary and president. Reed also served as secretary of Calendar Commitment, which is a local support group for the Naval Air Station in Belle Chasse. Reed served in the Louisiana Army National Guard for 10 years and is a graduate of LSU. He has 3 children, Carson, Audrey, who are graduates of Belle Chasse High School and currently attending LSU, and Charlotte, who is a senior at Belle Chasse High School. Please welcome our moderator for the program this evening, Mr. Reed McClellan.
Thank you, Michelle. It's a great honor to host this debate and be the moderator for the PABI-sponsored debate. As you know, this is a very important part of the political process and one of the great aspects of living in a free country. So I appreciate everybody who attends tonight to show that they care, and I also hope that anybody that does watch will go and vote. Regardless of your political affiliation, regardless of your political beliefs, I want you to go vote and make your voice heard, because that's what makes us different from most of the countries and most of the people in this world. For the debate tonight, the format is that the candidates will be given opening and closing remarks. They will have 3 minutes to do such. We also have some very specific pointed questions. For those questions, they will each have 1 minute to respond. Mr. Scott Morris, our timekeeper, will hold up the stop card when you have about 5 or 10 seconds left. So when you see the stop card, you do have a few seconds left to go ahead and finish your comment, but in order to keep things on track and on time, please keep those responses to those time limits. Also, and I said at the very beginning, if anybody came in late, please take your cell phones out now, put them on silent or turn them off or put them on vibrate, as it can be very distracting to our candidates when they're trying to tell you their thoughts on these different positions. And first we have the state representatives race, Mr. Chris Leopold and Mr. Chris Schultz. And we have them in their alphabetical order as how they're appearing on stage from left to right. Okay, so I just want to again thank everybody for attending, and away we go. So, Mr. Leopold, you have 3 minutes for your self-introduction and opening statement, please.
Thank you, Reed, and I want to thank PABI for hosting this very important debate, and I too agree that we can't do these types of things enough in the democratic process that we can't take for granted. My name is Chris Leopold. I grew up here in Belle Chasse, and as a young person, we came to recreation here in this very same building, have very fond memories of this same campus as a young man growing up. I graduated from high school from St. Martin's Episcopal School in Metairie in 1986, attended Southeastern Louisiana University, graduated in 1990 with a Bachelor of Arts in Business. While at Southeastern, I was an active member of the Student Senate and was elected vice chair, and I was a non-Greek member of the Student Senate, which was pretty rare for someone who was not in the Greek system to be an officer in the Student Senate. After college, I moved back to Belle Chasse, wound up buying a camp down in Happy Jack, lived there for 5 years, got married to Joanna Capella, who I met at the Orange Festival selection in 1990. In 1999, I ran for this very same position as the only Republican in the race and was not successful. And not being a career politician, I waited 13 years to run for the same job that I did not get the first time I had run. At the time, the incumbent state representative, Mr. Ernest Wooten, who served for 13 years, after his term had expired, endorsed me in my race, as he had made a commitment to me early on that he kept after all these years, and for that I'd like to thank him. After not being successful in the state representative race, I ran for the Republican State Central Committee, which is the governing body of the Republican State Party, and served for 3 terms. I have 12 years of elected experience at that time serving on the Republican State Central Committee. Joanna and I have 3 children, 2 in college, 1 in high school. We're practicing Catholics. All 3 of my children have received their sacraments of the Roman Catholic Church. I have 100% voting with the Louisiana Right to Life, and I have won multiple awards from the Louisiana Family Forum. Let me repeat that. I have 100% voting record with the Louisiana Right to Life. During my term in office, some of the things that I have accomplished and worked toward is increased funding for the Metropolitan Human Services District, which in turn returns dollars to this area through the CARE organization for the much needed needs of mental health and social services. Also during that time, I carried legislation for the fire department at the request of Roy Robichaux, making sure that the new firefighters were able to join the parochial retirement system. Also during that time, respecting the need of first responders. That's it?
Okay, Mr. Schultz, you have 3 minutes for a self-introduction and opening statement.
First off, I want to thank PABI for having this debate or forum. I want to thank the high school auditorium for letting us have it here. As Reed said, no matter who you're for, we need to go vote. We have not just this election, the sheriff's election, governors, we got a lot of elections that we need to exercise our right to vote. My name is Chris Schultz. I've been married to my wife, Rachel, for 10 years now. We have 1 son that just started kindergarten. I grew up here in Belle Chasse, went to Brother Martin High School, graduated in 2004. Went to Louisiana Tech. I actually got my degree in aviation and accounting. After college, I lived up in North Louisiana in Shreveport for about 10 years total in North Louisiana. I was flying for airlines so I could live wherever and commute to my base. After realizing that I was never home, I needed a change. I used my accounting degree and switched jobs. Basically, I'm involved in the community. My kid that does all the YMCA sports programs, so I coach his teams. I'm a volunteer firefighter here in Belle Chasse, basically responding to any types of calls, day or night. I've always been interested in public service, obviously through the fire department, but also in politics, but I've never run. I'm not a career politician. I think that's a benefit to me. I have no loyalties or anything like that. I'm going to vote for what's best for this district. The reason I decided to run now, as we all know, one of the main issues is the Belle Chasse Bridge toll. We'll get into that in a little bit, but I felt like somebody needs to stand up and fight for the people. I started looking at other issues that our current representative voted on or lack of vote or was involved in different issues, and I felt like somebody needs to step up now. We have everything from BP money, toll bridge, coastal restoration, all that. My day job is I'm a CPA. I'm also a certified fraud examiner. My specialty is governmental audits and healthcare audits. I go into different types of governments, sheriff's offices, school boards, parish councils, and audit their books to see whether they're following the law and how they're spending money and making sure they have proper record keeping, everything is correct when they submit their reports to the legislative auditor. So I feel like that advantage, that will be an advantage to me because I know how to get into the budgets, I know how the laws work, budget laws, bid laws, all this other stuff, so I can get in there and help us find real solutions to real problems. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Mr. Schultz? My mic keeps going to sleep on me here. Okay, so Mr. Schultz, this question you will answer first. You have 1 minute to respond. Why do you want to be state representative?
Like I said a couple seconds ago, I always wanted to get into politics. I always thought that I could make a difference. Like I said, I'm part of the volunteer fire department. I like to make a difference. I've always been involved in different little things. And as different issues came up over the past couple of years, I realized that, in my opinion, we thought I needed to step up and fight for this parish. I'm not saying everything Mr. Leopold's done has been wrong, but there's been certain issues that I feel like we could have been better represented. I feel like I have a unique knowledge with CPA and governmental experience that we can find money where we're wasting money as a state as a whole. We're last in almost every major category: infrastructure, education, business opportunities. So somewhere in the state government, we're not doing something right. And I feel like for the future of my children, everybody's children, we need to step up and change the way things are done.
Okay, Mr. Leopold, why do you want to be state representative?
Reed, I want to continue and finish what I started by having a third term. The state of Louisiana right now is enjoying a surplus as a result of a sales tax that was passed by the bipartisan legislature. The sales tax has a sunset on it where it ends, and the surplus, as small as it is a surplus. And I think that as we move forward, hopefully we can get our house in order, and when the sales tax sunsets, we can put it back to where it was before. I've had a good relationship with local officials. I've wanted to continue that. You might have seen some of our work together in Tropical Snow and Barry in the Plaquemines area. We meet monthly. We work very, very well together. I have some relationships in Baton Rouge with some of my colleagues. I was able to serve as Vice Chairman of Natural Resources in my second term, and I intend, after winning, to move up the ladder and getting more leadership positions in my third term.
Okay, the next question, Mr. Leopold, you will respond first. What distinguishes you from the other candidates in the race?
What distinguishes me from the other candidates in the race is my experience, my record, my ability to find the middle, my ability not to knee-jerk when an issue comes up, but rather seek the information, use the tools at hand, and find a solution that works instead of saying no at the first impulse. I think that political maturity and pedigree, if you will, is necessary in these very challenging times to do more with less. I think that's been exemplified in some of the other things that I have done. I know the Belle Chase Bridge and Tunnel is contentious as it was. I think we know more now than we did when we first started. And that's an example of not overreacting when something first comes up, getting the information and making the best moving forward in order to best represent the community and to use those funds, as scarce as they are, in the best way we can.
Okay, Mr. Schultz, what distinguishes you from the other candidates in this race?
Well, first of all, I'm not a career politician. I admit that. But to me, that's an advantage. I don't have any loyalties. I haven't come from one government and feel like I have to owe anybody anything. I feel also like my governmental experiences dealing with different CFOs, board members, council members throughout the state will be a benefit to me because I know how to communicate with these government officials. I feel like I can get in there, look at our budget, find ways that we can cut taxes, cut spending. The state budget increased 10% since 2016. So we need to cut spending and solve the problems the root problems. So I feel like those different little items can help me get in there and communicate with different people and solve problems.
Okay, next question, and Mr. Schultz, you'll respond first, and you'll have 1 minute to respond to what do you think is the most important skill needed to be an effective state representative?
I think communication. I mean, you're communicating with, in some cases, the Senate, the governor, fellow legislators, council members in your district, school board members in your district, residents, activists. You got to communicate with everybody and get input from everybody and figure out how to work together throughout the different levels of government and actually come up with a solution. You're not going to make everybody happy every day, but you have to communicate. You have to find out the root cause of the issues that are coming up, and therefore I think communication is the key point.
Okay. Mr. Leopold, what do you think is the most important skill of being an effective state representative?
I think the most important skill to be an effective legislator is patience. Government, unlike business, works at a much slower time, pace, and frame than business. You have to be patient, not only with the system and the process, but the people in which you communicate with and deal with and take the long ball approach. It's a marathon, not a sprint. You have to look for see what's underneath. And again, you work with the root cause analysis, I get that. But once you get to that point, you have to know how to reach across the aisle, to work with other people, and to have the patience, again, to see things through to the complete end.
Okay. Mr. Leopold, you are first for this question, 1 minute to respond. Do you have a specific goal that you would like to reach or accomplish within your first year of the next session?
I have several. I don't know if it's for the first year, but completion of my last term. I would like to see a dedicated revenue source for mental health in this parish, similar to Jefferson Parish. They have a millage that's dedicated strictly to human services. Jefferson Parish, unlike Plaquemines, St. Bernard, and Orleans, does not get its funding directly from the Metropolitan Human Services District. It gets it from a millage that it has on its own. I think that is a huge unmet need in this area, and if I can accomplish anything, hopefully in 1 year, we've started the groundwork already, is to get that accomplished moving forward, so when our young children are hitting those bumps in life, they have the backup that some of the families in this community may not be able to provide themselves.
Okay. Mr. Schultz, do you have a specific goal that you would like to reach or accomplish in your first year in office?
There's a lot of things I want to do, but the one realistic one that I think can be accomplished in the first year is tort reform. They've been talking about it for years. They always bring it up. They brought it up again this year, but it's an election year, and they shelved it again. I'm not saying, Mr. Leopold, that was a committee that shelved it, but we need to actually do something that will lower our hopefully lower our insurance rates. That will allow residents to have more discretionary income instead of paying the highest rates or second highest rates in the country on insurance. There's other issues with how insurance companies can pick and choose what they offer in different areas. With tort reform and insurance reform as a whole, I think we can solve a lot of issues that go on with lawsuits and insurance rates and discretionary income.
Okay, Mr. Schultz, you will be first with 1 minute to respond. How should we address the replacement or addition of a new bridge tunnel in Belle Chasse, and how should it be paid for? Do you favor tolls?
No, I do not think a toll on the Belle Chasse Bridge. I've been saying that from day one. I think, honestly, we need to get back to the focus of Peters Road Bridge. That has always been the priority for as long as I can remember. That will allow industry to grow, businesses to come in. That will allow evacuation route for southern Plaquemines. That will basically actually solve some of our traffic issues. The new proposed bridge that they had coming with a toll wouldn't really solve our traffic issues. Go outside, right outside at the high school at 4:30, traffic's already bad, bridge is in curfew. So we're not adding any more lanes, we're not doing anything with the new bridge. So I say focus on Peters Road first. Revenue, I think we can adjust taxes some. I'm actually prefer to raise the gasoline tax a little bit. And I think, but I want to cut taxes in other areas first because we have this massive surplus this year. And I think if we can redirect that tax, we can fund some infrastructure projects.
Okay, Mr. Leopold, 1 minute to respond. How should we address the replacement or addition of a new bridge tunnel in Belle Chasse, and how should it be paid for? Do you favor tolls?
I do not favor tolls on the Belle Chasse Bridge and tunnel replacement. After seeing the final renegotiated rate, and how unfair it was not only to the people in the parish, but it was also very unfair to the business owners that own trucks, and it was also unfair and not compensated for in the renegotiated rate as it affects people who live north of the Belle Chasse Bridge. I have been working diligently with Senator Cassidy's office to, in fact, see if the infra grant can still be used on the Belle Chasse Bridge without a toll. And I've learned that $34 million has to be raised in the private sector. And tomorrow we have a follow-up conference call with local officials to clarify that. We're trusting and verifying what the state has told us. If we can't move this project forward by raising the $34 million, we'll have to go back, take the money that was dedicated to the repair of the tunnel, since the proposed bridge did not increase capacity, and continue to live with an improved tunnel in the current bridge.
Okay, Mr. Leopold, this question, you will be first with 1 minute to respond. A recent poll found that a majority of likely Plaquemines Parish voters are in favor of the proposed sediment diversion projects. If a majority does support them, would you be willing to set aside personal feelings or misgivings about these projects to support them? If not, why not?
Could you repeat the question?
A recent poll found that a majority of likely Plaquemines Parish voters are in favor of the proposed sediment diversion projects. If a majority does support them, would you be willing to set aside personal feelings or misgivings about these projects to support them? If not, why not?
I would be willing to put my personal feelings aside, but it has to be based on where we are when the EIS is done and what we have at the end of the day. Just like the Belle Chasse Bridge and Tunnel, you have to know all the facts before you can take an educated, informed decision. On the diversions themselves, and I had a conversation earlier today, the size of it has been scaled back over the years from having no levees and let the river run wild to the Bonnie Carey size of 250,000 CSF. Now it's down anywhere from 75 down to 30. The question about the diversions, is salinity going to be a variable when it's put on and off? Who's going to open and close it? And what's the operational structure going to be? But that project's going to be the timetable on it is much further in the future than the Belle Chasse Bridge and Tunnel. But as the EIS moves forward and we get more and more information, I think with that information we can make the best feelings going forward and put our personal decisions aside and make the best information with the information at the table.
Okay, Mr. Schultz. A recent poll found that a majority of likely Plaquemines Parish voters are in favor of the proposed sediment diversion projects. If a majority does support them, would you be willing to set aside your personal feelings or misgivings about these projects to support them? If not, why not?
First of all, I'm against the diversions based on the research and everything right now that we have. Now, what I would like to see is some type of town hall, not put on by me, not Mr. Leopold if he's elected, not the CPRA, independent people that have both sides of the studies. Let people come in and see all the facts. I think a lot of the facts are being misconstrued right now, not by, I'm not saying by anybody in the government, but a lot of the facts are being not stated properly. If the residents still want to do it, I will talk to the local government, I will talk to the local activists, I will talk to the local industries and make sure we can come up with a plan. I will put aside my personal differences, but I want to make sure everybody's involved while we're trying to solve this problem. You can't just go in and say, oh, 90% of the people say they're for it, but how do you know they have all the facts? I think a lot of research is still coming in on different subjects, on different diversions that we need to continue to wait and see.
Okay, Mr. Schultz, you're first with this question, 1 minute to respond. Provide your definition of integrity, how you practice it, and how you would instill integrity to your elected office.
Well, I have to deal with integrity every day. I mean, I have to go into an independent, whoever I'm doing an audit for, and basically look at their books, and not have any opinion on them, whether I like them or not. There's some government agencies that I don't like what they do, but I have to go in and look at what they do, making sure they're following the law. So I would carry that over if elected, and every day do what I'm elected to do, what I'm paid to do, and that is to represent the people of this parish and this district. I think we need to communicate throughout the area, and I would carry that over, have an open mind, not take my personal feelings into the office, but I mean, I've been meeting with different types of people, pro and con versus on a whole bunch of issues. But you have to do that as an elected official and listen to everybody and do your job.
Mr. Leopold, provide your definition of integrity, how you practice it, and how you will instill integrity to your elected office. 1 minute.
I'm going to give you the perfect example how, as an elected official, I have used integrity in running in my office. During the last session at the end, I had a lot of requests for commenting on Facebook. I asked people to email my office. Mr. Schultz was he was the second one that did email my office, and I replied with all the questions he answered. And he asked me, do you mind if I respond to the people's questions stating that you have stated here? People think that you are involved when it sounds like this bridge is out of your hands. A lot of people respect you as our rep, but this is making you look bad, and it sounds like you are not even involved. So I started the engagement using integrity, having an open door policy, one man, one vote. And even at the point to when this gentleman was my opponent, I continued to invite him to the meetings at my office, even though he was running against me for the sake of the people. And I think that is a perfect implementation of integrity real time.
Okay, Mr. Leopold, you have the first round on the next question, 1 minute to respond. Tort reform has been a top issue in Louisiana for several years. What is your position on tort reform?
My record on tort reform is I voted to lower the jury threshold, which was one element of tort reform, on the House floor in my first term. It failed. I also voted this past session for Representative Talbot's bill as it related to the jury threshold and as it indirectly related to lowering the automobile insurance rates in the state of Louisiana. Unfortunately, the trial lawyers have a little bit more influence than they've had in a while. A related area, we've got to get more insurance companies here competing against each other. That will help lower the insurance rates as much as tort reform. But clearly, I'm a pro-business candidate, as I've been endorsed by LABI, the Alliance for Good Government, the National Federation of Independent Businesses. This is the third time that they've all endorsed me as a good business candidate, and I'm clearly for tort reform, not only in the past, but in the future.
Okay, Mr. Schultz, 1 minute to respond. Tort reform has been a top issue in Louisiana for several years. What is your position on tort reform?
As I said earlier, that's one of the things I want to get done the first year. It has to happen. We have one of the highest insurance rates in trial lawyers and bail bonds, or not bail bonds, but trial lawyers are, like Mr. Leopold said, involved in the process, which is part of the problem why it's not getting done. We need to lower the jury threshold, and basically it's, I think, 50,000 right now. We need to lower it. That way they can go directly to, the plaintiffs can name the involved suits rather than just directly suing their insurers. So I think we need to do something about it. I think we need to, part of the issue, like we said, trial lawyers are involved. We need to get them out the picture. We need to basically, I'm not saying Mr. Leopold's involved in anything, but I just think we have too much lobbyist involvement in politics, and we need to do something about it.
Okay, Mr. Schultz, first to respond on the next question. Are there any scenarios where you would be in favor of raising state taxes? Why or why not?
Right now, for general taxes, no. We have a $500 million surplus this year, 300 last year, 113 the year before. We've raised taxes in 16. We could have lowered it again in this past session, but it didn't get done. It lowered slightly, but not enough. Yes, there is a sunset period, but we need to solve it now. However, I am in favor of raising the gasoline tax. I think we need to cut taxes in other areas, give some of that back to the people, but as part of the problem, if you go throughout the state, you see infrastructure problems from Shreveport to Monroe to Lake Charles to here. We have infrastructure problems. Right now, we don't have the money, but we need to do it. I think the majority of the people are actually in favor. They know we're, I think, number 47 out of 50 states in our gas tax, and it shows. So I think if we can cut taxes elsewhere, raise the gas tax slightly, we can improve our infrastructure.
Okay, Mr. Leopold, same question, 1 minute to respond. Are there any scenarios where you would be in favor of raising state taxes? Why or why not?
Moving forward, considering the taxes that we've raised, I would say no. I did vote for the sales tax. It does have a sunset, and conservatives around the country are always promoting a flat tax, and we have it here in Louisiana as it relates to the sales tax because everyone pays it based on what you purchase. And there are protections for the poor as you don't pay sales taxes on prescription medication or on groceries. So it's really, if you're gonna have to raise the tax, I think as opposed to income tax, that the sales tax is the tax to raise. But to answer your question directly, I think we've got the bump that we need to figure out where we need to be at the end of the 7-year sunset. And while we're on surpluses, $500 million sounds like a lot of money. In comparison to the total state budget of $34 billion, it's not. They had a bond commission hearing last week. They refused to do a loan on a bond because they're going after the $500 million surplus that after you pay back where the dedications need to go is probably going to be about $300 million.
Okay, Mr. Leopold, first on the next question. How do you feel Louisiana's climate is for business, and what would you do to improve it?
Louisiana's climate for business is not where it was. It needs to get better. It goes back to tort reform that we both talked about, the influence that the trial lawyers have in the state. You see the billboards all over the place. That piece needs to be corrected. However, because of some of the things that we don't control directly in terms of our natural resources with the onset of fracking and natural gas, I think people are flocking here to capture our resources, but we need to do a really, really good job of regulating them like we have in the past, and perhaps that's the vehicle as the economy improves. There was an article today that we can maybe correct some of the things moving forward, and maybe that'll give us the impetus we need to put it back to where we were.
Okay, Mr. Schultz, 1 minute to respond. How do you feel about Louisiana's climate for business, and how would you improve it?
It's horrible. The climate for business in Louisiana is horrible. You read stories all the time of businesses leaving different areas, going to Texas, going to Florida, but you never read about it coming to Louisiana. Part of that is tort reform. Part of that is our infrastructure. Part of it's our education system. Part of it is our economy. We're all last in almost, or near last in almost every one of those areas. We need to improve our state on so many levels, and that will attract businesses. I mean, infrastructure, if you improve infrastructure, I know up in North Louisiana, one major business was about to leave the state because their trucks could not get basically to the interstate because of the infrastructure problems. And they finally worked out a problem, but that is a major multi-million-dollar company. I know that. So if we don't do something about all these other areas, businesses aren't going to want to come here, because if education's last, nobody wants to put their kids in a poor education system.
Okay. Mr. Schultz, you have first on this question. Higher education costs keep rising and student loan debt is at record levels. What do you think the state should do to ensure more Louisiana residents get college degrees or vocational training, and how would you fund that?
2008, I was in college. So I know very well during the budget cuts and the crisis, everything, how tuition rates have been rising. When I left, I had a nice sized loan that I had to pay back for mainly my aviation fees, but I still had to pay it back. We need to do something. Part of that is making sure TOPS is funded. That will ensure our lower income through our higher income families. I mean, everybody can qualify for TOPS. I think that not everybody needs to go to college. We preach that too much. And I have a college degree. My wife has a college degree. My whole family have college degrees, except for my father. But that doesn't mean he has a trade, and he does very well for himself. So I think we need to teach people that college is not always the answer. Too many times, kids get in there, they rack up student loans, and they go after useless degrees that they'll never be able to use, especially in this economy sometimes. So I think if we teach other options besides always college, that will expand our education background.
Okay, Mr. Leopold, same question, 1 minute to respond. Higher education costs keep rising and student loan debt is at record levels. What do you think the state should do to ensure more Louisiana residents get college degrees or vocational training, and how would you fund it?
I think I protected TOPS and it's stable for the next 4 years. It applies to both traditional four-year colleges and VOTEC. But the real problem with higher education in the state of Louisiana is we have too many colleges teaching the same degree programs. We have 4 governing boards, plus 1 over the 4 governing boards. We have too many colleges in Louisiana, and I think once that is streamlined out, it would be a huge political push to do. I think the cost of higher education would at least level off and possibly level for good. Not level for good, but be closer to not rising. But we purely have too many colleges, again, in some of these small towns where they're hardly, the student are just not enough to justify the expenses of the school. But TOPS is a good program. We've worked very hard in Baton Rouge to keep it in place and keep the funding recurring for the kids in Louisiana. But we got to have jobs to send them to once they come out of college.
Okay, next, this will be for Mr. Leopold first. Local and statewide news coverage has featured stories highlighting the dollar amounts that local governments do not receive as a result of property tax exemptions. There are many exemptions, including the homestead exemption, nonprofit exemptions, industrial manufacturing exemptions, and others. Taking into consideration the growing number of exemptions, do you support or oppose policies that shift the property tax burden to businesses? And what is your overall position on tax exemptions?
My record on tax exemptions is this. The public officials and I started getting together, October will be 2 years, because of the new industrial tax exemption rules that Governor Edwards enforced through executive order that lowered the amount of the exemption from 100 to 80%. And I think we're going to have to live with it now. It's been codified in the Commerce and Industry Board. But we worked together and wound up extending Bayreuth down in Venice, an exemption, got the school board to vote twice with us, and we were able to accommodate the business. And the next year, the business was back and did not ask for the exemption, so even though they were still here. So that's my experience with exemptions. The industrial tax exemption, again, as it's done now under the new executive order, is much more fair to local governments because 20% of the revenue is no longer exempt.
Okay, Mr. Schultz, same question. Local and statewide news coverage has featured stories highlighting the dollar amounts that local governments do not receive as a result of property tax exemptions. There are many exemptions, including homestead exemptions, nonprofit exemptions, industrial manufacturing exemptions, and others. Taking into consideration the growing number of exemptions, do you support or oppose policies that shift the property tax burden to businesses? What is your overall position on tax exemptions?
I think we need to do something to get businesses come here. Am I saying go all the way back up to 100% for the ITEP? No. But we have too much, basically Edwards cut it, and then we have other forces that, example, Exxon, I think in Baton Rouge was going to do something, and there was a lot of groups basically protesting and having to do the loopholes and all that, that Exxon decided to not build their plant here and move things to Texas. So that's a business loss. Am I saying go back up to 100? No, but we need to work with local governments, school board members, the sheriff. I know I think areas have the sheriff involved with the exemptions. So, and figure out something that will bring businesses in, but at the same time won't hurt the local governments. It's all about patience, as Mr. Leopold said, and try and find a compromise between everybody, but we need to do something to bring businesses into the state.
Okay, next question, Mr. Schultz, you will be first. 1 minute to respond. What is your position on the state implementing a minimum wage that is higher than the federal minimum wage?
I disagree with it. Or, well, higher than federal. Sorry, I misunderstood the question there. I think we do need to raise it slightly. I think it's right now $7.25. I think we need to raise it slightly. Am I saying go like California and New York and Washington to $15, $20 an hour? Absolutely not, because that will hurt small businesses. They'll cut hours, and therefore it's still the same result. Some people, I feel like there's a lot of jobs out there that people need to either get some type of technical training, get a college degree or something like that, where they're not forced into a minimum wage job. I think we need to help our citizens to find that training, whether it's government involvement through different programs or what. But like I said, I'm fine with raising the minimum wage slightly, but I'm not saying raise it to $15 an hour or anything like that.
Okay, Mr. Leopold, what is your position on the state implementing a minimum wage that is higher than the federal minimum wage?
I'm against it. That's it.
Okay.
Well, let me take my time. I hate to give up time. Businesses should dictate what they pay their employees, not the government. If an employee is there at a Subway making sandwiches and he or she is a good employee, then the proprietor will pay that person accordingly to how it fits into that person's business model. On the other hand, a young person or anybody working can always go to another job as their skill set increases. I don't think it's government's role. I think it's a federal issue, and the state should not address the minimum wage in this state.
Okay. The next question, Mr. Leopold, you'll go first. I'll only read the question one time in the essence of time because it does have a few parts. So the question is for both candidates, both will have 1 minute to respond. Mr. Leopold will go first. Supporters of a constitutional convention say too many rules controlling government spending and tax policies are locked into the current Constitution, which limit lawmakers' ability to respond to financial problems or to determine spending priorities. In addition, the current Louisiana Constitution, adopted in 1974, has been amended over 200 times. So, would you support a call for a constitutional convention? If so, do you think legislators should serve as delegates, or that non-legislators be elected or appointed to a constitutional convention? Mr. Leopold, you're first.
I would not be in support of a constitutional convention. This parish would have way too much to lose in some of the provisions and articles, particularly as it relates to revenue to the parish. I think the risk versus the reward is not worth going there to uncap some of the items in the Constitution that are unique to this area. So I would be against the Constitutional Convention.
Okay, Mr. Schultz, 1 minute to respond.
I'm for it. Like you said, there's over 200 amendments to the Constitution. A lot of people have or not people, but over the years, legislators put their little protections in and all this other stuff. I understand we have a lot to lose possibly in this parish, but like I said, when I was in college, higher education and healthcare was always the two areas that was cut, because that's pretty much where they're going to cut first because of the Constitution as it is written now. You can't cut a lot of the other areas because they're protected. I think that's our future, healthcare and higher education and education in general. So if we keep cutting it, when are we going to stop? And I understand we're doing a lot better now, but I think we need a constitutional amendment convention. I'm support. It's a lot of work, and I understand. The question was, will I support delegates and legislators? I think you need the legislators because that's their job. They're supposed to get in there and do it, but I do support it.
Okay, next question, Mr. Schultz, first to respond. Only read the question one time, so both candidates will respond. There is a large backlog of infrastructure projects in this state. Would you support legislation to raise the state gas tax to reduce the backlog of infrastructure projects? If not, what should the state do about this backlog?
I do support. As I said earlier, however, we need to cut taxes in other areas first. The sales tax, we have, I think, the second highest sales tax in the country, but I think besides Tennessee maybe, but they don't have an income tax. So we have basically the highest tax rate, one of the highest in the country. I'm not saying go all the way up to 60 cents. I think we're at around 20 cents right now. I'd say maybe 30 cents. I prefer that over something like a toll. I'm not opposed 100% to tolls, but on this bridge I am, but in general. But I'm opposed. I think if we can raise the gas tax slightly, a toll, you don't know what the rates are going to be in the future. As we saw this one, it could rise by CPI, 1 cent, whatever. With the gas tax, if it's set and slowly increases based on however the law is written, if it's set, you can actually budget better instead of a toll that you might or might not use.
Okay, Mr. Leopold, your response.
The surveys I have taken before session, no one wants to pay the gas tax either. So I would suggest putting it up to a vote of the people. I think that would be a way, and it was brought up in joint transportation a few Fridays ago. I think that would be something we could put before the vote of the people and let the people finally decide. But the surveys I have seen don't favor a gas tax as well. And on a point of clarification, the gas tax is not based on the price of gas, it's based on the consumption. So the problem we have with the gas tax in Louisiana is there's no CPI adjustment back from 1989, I think was the last time it was raised. It was raised 4 cents and went from 16 to 20 for the time program. And just remember, we raised the gas tax then, and there were still 3 projects that weren't funded 30 years later. Weren't built, excuse me.
Okay, Mr. Leopold, this is the last question before the closing statements. And Mr. Leopold will respond first, and Mr. Schultz, 1 minute. I will only read the question one time. Do you support legislation that allows local taxing bodies to decide whether to give tax breaks to corporations that are designed to bring business to Louisiana and create jobs, such as the ITEP program?
The local government now has a seat at the table to grant the ITEP under the new executive order. Without the vote of the school board, sheriff, and council, projects don't move forward. We already have that now as it relates to the ITEP.
Do you support that?
I do. I've been a part of it. I'm going to keep my minute. I was a part of it from the beginning. Even though I wasn't a voting member, I knew how critical it was to get it right the first time, and we did by meeting together. And now, as I think more and more projects come to our area, we won't be doing the larger ones as the first project under the new order. In fact, I got with Venture Global prior to the new laws taking effect, and Venture Global's first project was granted at the full exemption. However, their second project will not be, and this is in the best interest of the local taxing bodies as our increase in services will go up with the increased activity.
Mr. Schultz, you have 1 minute.
I agree with him. It needs to stay at the local level. I think if we bring it to the state level, too many parties that don't know what's best for their area will get involved. I think the council, the sheriff, the school board, all know what's going on in their area. I think they, especially here, communicate very well, and I think it needs to stay at the local level.
Okay, Mr. Schultz will go first. You have 3 minutes for your closing statement.
Again, I want to thank everybody for coming. I know that me and Mr. Leopold disagree on a lot of subjects. I know we agree on some subjects, but overall, I feel like we need to do something to solve our state's problem, our parish's problem, and sometimes that requires change. Change is not necessarily a bad thing. There's a lot of issues that we have coming up that are ongoing between the diversions, between the toll bridge, between Peters Road. We have a lot of issues that will determine our future as a parish. So I just want to say, looking back over the last 8 years, what results have we really seen that was impactful for our area? I feel like we need to do something and stand up and fight. I appreciate you considering me for your state representative. Early voting starts Saturday, runs through the 5th, and then election day is October 12th. Like I said, if you don't vote for me, I still want you to go vote. That's our constitutional right. We need to go vote for, we have, like I said, a lot of important issues on the ballot. We have 4 constitutional amendments. We got the sheriff's race, we got the governor's race, and exercise your right to vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Leopold, 3 minutes for your closing statement.
We need to do something. We do need to do something moving forward. You need to reelect me as your state representative, and here's why. You have to have patience with the political process. I've been criticized because I don't fight. I fight every day when my feet hit the floor, but I fight with my mind more than I do with my mouth. It's all about the system. It's all about the process. You have to see things through to the end. It's like raising Highway 23 down the road where we got $11.5 million. That road has not flooded one time since it's been raised. Not one time, even in this last storm we had with Isaac. The money that we're able to protect for Peters Road is still there. We need to do a better job getting more on it. But there is money there on Peters Road, and it is moving forward, keeping it into the process, patiently moving it forward. Some of the other areas I'd like to see improved as we move forward, like I told you with the millage for mental health and social services, as we live in this very, very challenging society. There's just issues going on that we didn't have to deal with as young people, and we need all the help we can get in those areas. I attend the court drug graduations. I see the need. This area has some pockets of really some desolate, poor, poverty-stricken areas. At the same time, if we can land some of these large plants and projects and give them a fair exemption, but realize the money that we can now, that we couldn't before, 20% out of the gate, and develop those relationships with these CEOs from these companies and encourage them to work here 5 and 2 and not 7 and 7 when they have to live in the community where they work instead of come here, leave, and go home. Those are the kind of things we need to work together moving forward. As I close, it's been a great honor to serve you the last 8 years. I look forward to, if you decide, because I don't need any endorsement but yours, to serve the next 4, I would be honored. And just think of me in the definition of integrity, as it was asked earlier, as you make that very important decision in not only choosing me, but in all the officials who are up for re-election in Plaquemines Parish. Thank you very much.
Okay, I would like for everyone to know that all candidates for this forum were invited. I want to give special thanks to the 2 candidates that appeared tonight to accept the challenge to come up and answer tough questions in front of an audience. I wish you both luck. I wish you both a very good, hard-fought, fair campaign. And let's give these candidates a round of applause, please.
This is Russo's Pharmacy, with trained pharmacy professionals processing your prescription refills in the same manner with the same medicines you'd get at the big box stores. What makes us different? We live in your neighborhood, greet you by name, know your family, and go above and beyond to keep our community healthy. That's what Russo's Pharmacy is all about. Locally owned and operated for over 30 years, why not come to a place where you already feel like home?
Okay, let's get started. If you arrived late, please take your cell phones out, put them on airplane mode or on silent. Please do so at this time, as it can be very distracting when the candidates are trying to stay on point. So please, out of courtesy to our candidates, please take your cell phones out and put them on silent airplane mode. The format for this debate will be the same as for the state rep debate. Each candidate will give opening statements. That will be for 3 minutes, and we have some pointed questions to ask that will have 1 minute to respond, alternating and how they respond, and then they will have 3 minutes for closing statements. They are on stage in alphabetical order, so Mr. Lonnie Greco is going to be first for the opening statement, and Sheriff Jerry Turlidge will be second. So without further ado, let's get started. Mr. Greco, you have 3 minutes for your opening statement.
You're always picking on the short guy, huh? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. First, I would like to thank the members of PABI for sponsoring this debate tonight, and I would like to thank you for attending. There are going to be many issues tonight that we're discussing. However, having the pleasure of being your sheriff previously, I was surprised to see that the most important job of the sheriff was not listed here tonight, and that was crime. Every time I have run for office, I have walked through this parish talking with the residents, business owners, and single most important issue was crime. During my tenure as sheriff, we reduced crime by 17%. We did that by increasing visibility. In the neighborhood, increasing response times and very proactive in approach in our patrol methods. The second major change was that we took a proactive stance on the drug enforcement, making double the arrests for drug offenses than my opponent has made. Let's see where I'm at. Proactive patrols and aggressive drug enforcement are the two most important ways to reduce property crimes. Property crimes cost our residents a lot of money in insurance, and they're the single biggest safety issue. When your home is invaded and personal property is taken, it assaults our sense of safety and security and well-being. I mentioned drug enforcement as well because it is well accepted that where drug dealing and drug users or the rampant crime rises comparably. The sheriff claims that he has had the lowest crime rate in the history of this parish. That exactly is not true. His own crime report stats from the Louisiana Commission on Law Enforcement is his numbers only, and that's annually reported to the FBI Uniform Crime Report, and his crime has steadily risen year after year after year. The truth is, there is no sheriff that controls every crime, and if we did, there would be no crime. However, the number one priority of every sheriff is to deter the crime that he can through his method of patrol and reducing his response time to the occurrence of crime. Then his job is to effectively investigate and effect the arrest of the perpetrator and provide an accurate report to the district attorneys for adjudication. This is our number one job. The sheriff have been affected in his regards. While I was sheriff, we were reducing crime and solving crimes that were committed. I look forward to discussing a lot of these issues tonight as we go ahead and further into the debate. I am proud to say that I am married to my wife, Jody, for 21 years. We have a daughter named Catherine, who is 14 years of age, attending Dominican High School, and we have been proud of her ever since. I thank you for your time, and I look forward to discussing some more during the debate.
All right, Mr. Turlidge, 3 minutes for your opening statement.
First, I want to thank PABI for hosting us tonight, and I want to thank my wonderful family. I see my family and a lot of my friends and staff members and members of our community. Thank y'all for taking the time out of your day to come and listen to our debate. A couple things. I'm Sheriff Jerry Turlidge. I have almost 30 years of experience. I started my career in January of 1990 under Sheriff Ernest Wooten, who's in the audience. And I would like to think each and every step of the way was a learning tool for me. I worked in corrections, worked in patrol, I worked as a sergeant, I worked as a lieutenant, I worked as a captain where I was assigned to the FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force, and then I was named the Guardian Threat Coordinator there. Then I was promoted to Deputy Chief. Then finally in 2015, a couple of our sheriffs hit a couple road bumps, and there were 7 of us that ran, and I was fortunate enough to win the sheriff's race in the first primary. So, some of the things. I inherited a train wreck, and I truly believe this, and I think y'all will too. 2011, 12, 13, 14, and 15 were not good times for the sheriff's office, nor our parish. We had low morale, we had really bad finances, and just overall leadership was lacking. So the first thing I did, I surrounded myself with a very competent and capable staff, because we can't do it alone. I mean, you can be Drew Brees, but if you don't have a left tackle, Alvin Kamara running, a wide receiver catching, a defense holding the other team, you ain't gonna get it done. So I think my team, just the top 10 members, have 256 years of diverse law enforcement experience. I think with the hard work of my team and the dedication of the men and the women of the Sheriff's Office, including my correctional staff, my dispatchers, my patrol, my investigation, my administration, down to my clerical workers, we've kept you safe, we've balanced the budget, and I don't think you've ever seen a sheriff that's involved in community like I have. I don't think you've ever seen a sheriff go down to Venice, Boothville, Port Sulphur, Buras, Empire, East Bank, Belle Chasse, like we have. We are totally embedded in our community, and I think that pays dividends. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we go on. But the most important thing, and I think, I know I'll talk about that on my closing, but I think the most important thing is we restored integrity to the position of sheriff. I think that was the number one thing I think that you wanted. I think it was the number one thing that I wanted, and I think we've managed that, and I hope y'all base this on our actions and what we've accomplished during his term or my term. Y'all weigh that out and look at it. But I think integrity and restoring integrity was important. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Turledge, you will go first on this question, and you have 1 minute to respond. And then Mr. Greco, you will also have 1 minute to respond to this question. Mr. Turledge, what is the number one thing that distinguishes you from the other candidate?
Experience. I think it's very difficult to go from a deputy to a sheriff. Very, very difficult. And I know Lonnie has 11 years experience as a deputy, but I had 5 years as a deputy, 5 as a sergeant. And I think you learn leadership. I think you learn compassion, patience, and then you go to lieutenant, and then you start running your 4 sergeants. Then you learn to start dealing with the public, and you get a little bit more responsibility. Then you go to captain, now you're dealing with multiple people. I actually was assigned to the FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force, where I worked with the CIA, State Department, CBP. I got to meet all of our federal and state leaders. I was at the Anti-Terrorism Advisory Council. I think some of those things. I went to deputy chief, implemented the first active shooter training ever for Plaquemines Parish, and then finally sheriff. I went to the National Sheriff's Institute in Colorado. This was with 49 other sheriffs from around the country. I also went to the Law Enforcement Executive Development at Quantico, and you got to get selected for this. And I'm gonna tell you, one of the police chiefs from New York actually named me as the class spokesman. This was 50 police chiefs from around the country. I'm sorry.
Mr. Greco, same question. What is the number one thing that distinguishes you from the other candidate?
Well, my experience as a crime fighter, as a sheriff, you can see that, we fought the crime that was down here in our parish that was rising high. The drug trade, we did very well on that. We had 1,200 drug arrests, and in the conference, we had also identified where it was 132 known drug dealers that we had arrested at the time, get them off our streets. But it's all about safety, crime, and quality of life that you provide for your citizens. Jerry, on the other hand, is a nice guy. I got to give it to you, Jerry. You got it. On the other hand, for me, I'm more straightforward, to the point, and it's all about the job for me is getting it done, making sure that you are safe. And that's what I was driven on, is just making sure that I'm safe for my citizens. That's it.
Okay, Mr. Greco, you will go first on this question with 1 minute to respond. What do you think is the most important skill of being an effective sheriff?
Communication's one. Having a good staff underneath you, that way they can advise you of the things that is going on around your community. And to get the feedback. For me, it's when I was going around door to door knocking, you know, you hear people talking about the number one goal is crime, drugs. They're being affected day in and day out. And I'm not saying nothing about my opponent, but he doesn't go door to door, which he probably doesn't have to. I guess you don't, Jerry. But anyway, but no, it's about listening to the community as a whole, just to see what's going on for them and their issues.
Okay, Mr. Tarledge, 1 minute to respond. What do you think is the most important skill of being an effective sheriff?
Recognizing the assets you have and deploying them to the needs that are most needed. So I think you need to be a law enforcement. I think you have to have a law enforcement background, but it definitely helps to have an accounting background. My first 2 years in college was to be an accountant. So we can't effectively fight crime if we don't have the finances there for you to fight the crime. I mean, so I think having that background, mitigating the proposed budget was $4,961,000 in debt. I can't tell you, talk about put a lump in your throat, give you acid reflux, high blood pressure, right? Some of you guys know what I'm talking about. But I mean, that's what we were dealing with. So not only did we not have no money, we had poor morale, we were just in the gutter. So I think, to me, identifying problems and information sharing is key with a competent staff. That's it.
Okay, Mr. Tarledge will go first on the next question. 1 minute to respond. What is one specific goal that you would like to reach or accomplish in the next year as sheriff?
I'm already working on it. I don't know if y'all have seen the crime app where it's real-time reporting crime. So I know St. Tammany has it, New Orleans has it. We've met with Sidney Torres's representatives where these guys came over. It's a little expensive. It's about $50,000. So we're trying to see if we can tailor it to a smaller community, because New Orleans and St. Tammany are a lot bigger than ours. But I definitely want to go interactive with my citizens, because I'm very connected with my community. So a lot of people hit me with inbox messages, text messages, you name it, and I try to respond. But if I can get that app out to them where they go interactive with the guys on the street, like, because a lot of times, like Lonnie said, we do have some issues with drugs. Since 2011, we had BP, and they came down here to show us how to cook crystal meth, and since then, that has been on a rise since 2011. And I think that is one of our major concerns, and it's geographically based with some of this stuff too.
Okay, Mr. Greco, 1 minute to respond. What is one specific goal that you would like to reach or accomplish during the next year if elected sheriff?
It's to restore back high visibility within our community to our citizens, to let them know that we're there at all hours of the night in the daytime. You gotta spread your guys out. That's why when I was sheriff, the first thing that we did was we went ahead and we based it to where we got our guys in beats, to where we can have quicker response times. Our guys can go around, and women, riding around in the communities, neighborhoods, be able to see what's going on in your neighborhood. You have to have that high visible presence. If you don't have the presence that we're asking for, then what happens is your community starts wondering what's going on. And before you know it, crime is coming in, the drugs are there, and with the drugs comes everything else, thefts and burglaries. And those are on the rise also.
Okay, the next question, Mr. Greco goes first with 1 minute to respond. Do you feel that the parish is adequately patrolled now? If not, what would you do differently?
No, it's not adequately patrolled right now, and the reason why is because, you know, for the last 3.5 years, we haven't seen no presence. You know, I'm not saying nothing bad about the personnel that's there, because when I was sheriff, we was very aggressive and proactive. Now it's more based on a reactive type, and that's why you see the crimes that are being occurring now. You know, the crime is on the rise. It's in the newspaper today. If you ain't got one, go to Plaquemines Gazette, go pick up your paper and see the crime rate. You're gonna see it's been going up year after year after year. Since 2015, you look like the crime has been rising, and so people are concerned. Until you become that victim, you do not know what it's about. And I'm not saying nothing ugly about our personnel, because they are there. They worked well with me. But the thing is, there's a difference in leadership. I'm proactive, he's reactive.
Okay, Mr. Turledge, 1 minute to respond. Do you feel the parish is adequately patrolled now? If not, what would you do differently?
Yeah, so he's touting in 2014 was his best year. Well, guess who was the deputy chief over all uniformed personnel? Yours truly. So, and I don't know if even Lonnie knows this, but there's Louisiana Incident Management System that monitors these reports. There's NIBRS, National Incident-Based Reporting. I can tell you that there were 647 crimes. Those were your thefts, your auto thefts, your assaults, your aggravated assaults, your burglaries, your rapes, your murders, the whole 9 yards. Last year, we had 504 of those. And we have not changed the person who submits this. We submit it. We submit this information. So I think that you see our numbers, take a sliver of characteristics based on crime, but I can tell you the actual crimes committed, we're down to 504. Our call volume is down. All of it is down. So I think it is a testament to the active patrol and how we manage and how we fight crime. We do have a different ideology.
Okay, Mr. Turledge, you are first to respond to the next question. Both candidates will have 1 minute to respond. Question is, regarding the organizational structure of a police department, how do you achieve the proper balance between ranking officers and deputies who work on the streets?
Well, I think we've done a great job managing it. I think, you know, one thing we have done is we got the prison up and running. The prison was it was a monster. And I think if you talk to any sheriff, they'll tell you it's probably the #1 headaches, probably the #1 problem. But so we got a reentry program in there. Had to staff that. We have a transitional work program in there. Had to staff that. I mean, we're doing a lot of different things to better our detention center, because at the end of the day, that is what provides the funding. If I don't have that detention center up and running, so a lot of assets I have been devoting, it has been the detention center. I am putting the medicine where the hurt is, and that's where it was. So that is funding all of the other functions. That's what's doing it. And I think I'm very proud of what we accomplished with our detention center. We're even running post classes. Can y'all imagine that? Plaquemines Parish housing running post classes. So I think if you raise the intellect, I think intellect, you know, is where it's at.
Okay, Mr. Greco, same question. Regarding the organizational structure of a police department, how do you achieve the proper balance between ranking officers and deputies who work on the streets?
Well, I believe that every patrol shift should have a sergeant to begin with, and every couple of units can need like a lieutenant and a few captains. I know that I was criticized for having top heavy rank structure during my term, and as you know, Jerry, when you had got tossed out of the JTF, you know, you came back and you lost all that money for your overtime, and you came to me and told me, look, man, I can't afford to pay my bills and all that stuff, and I was very generous to you. And you know that. I took care of you, created a position for you, I took care of you for your salaries, that way you can help take care of your families. But it's amazing how things change, especially as perspectives. But I was looking at trying to cut my ranking staff through attrition. As guys retire, just try to work within your means, and that's where I was at.
Okay, next question, Mr. Greco will respond first, and 1 minute to respond. Provide your definition of integrity, how you practice it, and how you will instill integrity to your elected office.
Well, it's a shame to say that, with my integrity, I had a fault during my term as a sheriff, and I admitted my fault. Probably the only elected official, probably the state of Louisiana or probably the United States that admitted that he had a problem. I took responsibility for it. I even told the community I was sorry for it, told my family I was sorry for it. And yeah, it hurt. But the thing was, I reported it because it was involved in something that we did not know that was involved in, and there was a crime that was being committed. And I said, we're gonna go ahead and shed this light, and we did. And it came to find out that it was something that was very important, that somebody had committed a crime, and the blonde lady is always gonna take care of her justice. And I was not the type of guy that was just gonna sit there and say, no, we're not gonna investigate this because I was involved in something. Yes, what I've done was between me and my wife. But on the other hand, you had something also in your background that if you're gonna judge me fairly just like you should be judging him. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Turledge, 1 minute to respond to provide your definition of integrity, how you practice it, and how you will instill integrity to your elected office.
I would challenge anyone to go talk to anyone at the FBI who didn't think I had integrity. I was the first task force agent to ever receive this plaque that I have, and I'm gonna show it to y'all. I'll actually put that in the Gazette too if y'all want. But I think I've led with integrity from day one. I don't think the sheriffs, all 64 sheriffs, the president of the LSA appointed me to represent the sheriffs on the Governor's Justice Reinvestment Council. I think I think that shows some trust from a rookie sheriff. I don't think that's ever happened. So I think as far as integrity, I think I lead by example every day. I think y'all see me out there in the community with kids. I think you see me out there in the community with our seniors. I think you see me out there in the community with our men. And I like to think my staff is also. You haven't seen one blemish. I think you had multiple blemishes prior to us getting in. So thank you.
Okay, next question, Mr. Turledge goes first. Do you feel there's sufficient revenue currently to operate the Plaquemines Parish Sheriff's Office, and please explain?
Wait, what was that?
Do you feel there is sufficient revenue to operate the Plaquemines Parish Sheriff's Office? Please explain.
Yes, I think I'm the first sheriff, and I pulled the audits all the way back from 1992. Guys, I can't tell you how important this is. I pulled all the audits from 1992. We were in the black in 92, 97, and 98, the 4 years after Katrina, because why? We had federal funding. In 2000, I think 11, because we had BP monies coming in. I have ran in the black all 3 years. 1.3 million my first year, $700,000 my second year, and we haven't got our final audit yet this year ending, but they should be coming in, I think, in October, and I should have my final numbers then, but I'm expecting to be $300,000 in the black. Go look at, unfortunately, Lonnie ran almost a $2 million deficit every single year. The bond commission wrote him a letter, basically, dear sheriff, you've been deficit spending at a $2 million clip a year. What are you going to do about it? So what they reported was we're going to lay off 100 officers. Let that register for a second, 100.
Okay, Mr. Greco, 1 minute to respond. Do you feel there is sufficient revenue to operate the Plaquemines Parish Sheriff's Office? Please explain.
I think that by him rolling the millage forward to 17%, 17 point, let's see here, I got it. I don't have it. 17.65, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's a little bit too excessive. I think right now, what we're looking at with the parish government and then the crisis of finances, that we could roll back that millage that was for the parish prison, because that was generated to operate the prison. And right now, the prison is paid for in full by FEMA. So by rolling that back, we can probably give a little leeway towards the parish government to help them out with the funding for the levees and the mosquito control and drainage. As far as what he was saying earlier, right there on that table for you guys to come take a look at, you'll see all three of them right there, and shows where he borrowed $14.5 million, $14,500,000 from the Bonds Commission in all 4 years. I left him with $4.48 million that he signed off on, that Monica Nicosia signed off and notarized it. And the last one is going to be when he was with the FBI, He committed a crime when he went ahead and posted his federal ID on the newspaper. That is a crime in itself, US 18 Code 701. Thank you.
Time has expired. All right, Mr. Greco goes first on the next question. What is your position on traffic cameras in Plaquemines Parish? If not for them, why not, and do you have an alternative?
I do not like traffic cameras, period.
Okay.
What was the question?
What is your position on traffic cameras in Plaquemines Parish? If you're not in favor,
No,
do you
no,
have
I'm not
an
in favor.
alternative?
I'm not in favor of it.
Okay. All right, Mr. Turley, same question. What is your position on traffic cameras in Plaquemines Parish? If not in favor, do you have an alternative?
No, I'm not in favor, and if the public wanted it, I'd leave it up to a vote of the people.
Okay. Next question. This will be for Mr. Turledge first, and Lonnie will have 1 minute to respond. As a sheriff, how do you instill good morale among the ranks of a police department?
Good leadership, putting them in good positions to do their jobs, make sure that they go home with the benefits that they work so hard for. And I think that's what we did. I think we identified good leaders, quality leaders, and that's who is leading the men now. And I think you can see it in their performance. I think I love my staff. I wouldn't trade any of my men and women of the Sheriff's Office for anything. I think they're all doing a great job.
Okay, Mr. Greco, as a sheriff, how do you instill good morale among the ranks of a police department?
How is it going now, you're saying?
How do you instill good morale among the ranks of the police department?
Well, it starts with leadership, you know, and it allows the guys to go ahead, that they are trained to do their jobs, they care, they know how to do their job after coming out of the academy. And the thing is, as a good leader, is to allow you guys to do the jobs that they are trained to do. You don't go out there and tell your men what laws to enforce and what laws not to enforce. That's what has been going on since day one, since he has taken office. You can't have that. Then you tell these guys who can be touched and who can't be touched. I mean, it's plain and simple. Just look at what's going on, for instance, like honorary commissions. When these guys go out there and they get pulled over on a traffic stop for speeding 70, 80 miles an hour or higher, and then all of a sudden, I'm on the list. I'm on that special list. That is not correct. That shouldn't be done. I mean, it breaks the morale of your men to begin with that's working underneath you. These men and women put their life on the line every single day to do one thing, to keep you safe and bring themselves back home after their shift.
Okay, next question. Mr. Greco, you will go first. Opioid addiction has become an epidemic in this country. How can a sheriff combat this problem? 1 minute.
High visibility. Working with the care unit that we have out here in Plaquemines Parish, I understand that they do a very good job doing it. We do have a serious problem right now with opioids, and it's not just Plaquemines Parish, it's all over the country. But mainly because over here, like Jerry said earlier, after the BPL spill, you had people out here cooking. And then we got this large body of water with the bayous, and you got the Gulf. Drugs are rapid everywhere. It's an addiction. You have to try to fix that addiction. And the only way you can do that is try to talk to the guys and let them know that, look, even though that you have a serious problem, we need to get these people some serious and immediate care to be able to prevent this thing from happening again. I know it's a sickness.
Okay, Mr. Turledge, same question. Opioid addiction has become an epidemic in this country. How can a sheriff combat this problem? 1 minute.
I think there's 3 things you can do: enforcement, response, and maintenance, right? So I know the previous administrator, I know Lonnie did a roundup. He had 53 subjects arrested. 3 did time. That's 5%. I think you could have fit the amount of drugs in a Happy Meal bag. So what we did was we started using sophisticated techniques, working with our federal partners. We have taken 12 cases federally, 3 of them on opioid usage. So I'm gonna tell you, these guys got a flat 7 years with no bond or no good time. So I think that's important. Our response, we have DEA Drug Take-Back Day at the Belle Chase lockup. We have Narcan training, first time in the history of Plaquemines Parish, for all my deputies, which resulted in 4 lives saved. And we have maintenance. I am on the Citizens Youth and Planning Board at the Care Center. We have our DARE program. We teach our kids the dangers of drugs. We have our Young Marine program, teaches drug awareness, and we have our Junior Deputy program. So I think we're doing well on those.
All right, next question, Mr. Tarledge goes first. What is Plaquemines Parish most pressing law enforcement issue? 1 minute.
Most pressing, I would say, and it's geographically based, I would say from Empire South, we have a crystal meth problem, and it leads to petty theft, like a fishing pole, a power tool, a propane bottle. So we are gonna really be vigilant. I have already talked to the District 2 commander. We've had many talks. If there's anyone, and I'm gonna tell you they're doing it, and they're very difficult to catch because they're doing it on four-wheelers or dirt bikes, and my guys will take off after them, and they're very, very difficult to catch. So we're gonna use other means, and we need to get a little bit more tricky because as they keep adapting to us catching them, we need to keep adapting to maybe getting a dirt bike, maybe getting four-wheelers, maybe going covert altogether. But I think the drug issue is probably the #1 issue. I think in Belle Chasse, I think you have a lot of kids doing vape, using multiple substances in vape. So if you're a parent or grandparent, I would definitely be checking with your children because I definitely think that is a problem.
Okay, Mr. Greco, 1 minute to respond. What is Plaquemines Parish most pressing law enforcement issue?
Opioid problem is going to be one, your drug addiction. It's a very serious issue. No matter what, it brings everything else. It brings in thefts and it brings in burglaries and auto thefts. But again, it's going to be the opioid problem. And you just have to be highly aggressive on it. You have to make some good solid cases and just continue to press forward to make sure that you make these guys understand that, we're not going to lay back on it. We're going to keep moving forward, even though how many times you're going to keep getting arrested. But it's to try to get these people the help that they duly need. And it all goes to what we can do as a sheriff. You can do your job, but then the next step is got to go to the district attorney's office so they can go ahead and make their process on what they need to get done. And again, it goes to like maybe diversionary programs and all that stuff that they're doing right now. But sometimes it works and sometimes it don't. You still keep getting the repeat offenders over and over and over again. And that is a serious problem, not only here, but throughout the United States.
Okay, next question for Mr. Greco first. If you received a $1 million grant to use any way you wished for the department, what would you do with it and why?
If I were to receive a $1 million grant?
A $1 million grant.
I guess it would be to go ahead and give drug education throughout our community, because that is one of the biggest hits that we have throughout the parish is the drug opioid problems. And that would probably be the help out education for the drug activities that's going on.
Okay, Mr. Tarledge, if you received a $1 million grant to use any way you wished for the department, what would you do with it and why?
Well, we already tapped into the port grant, and I'm gonna tell you what we're doing with it. We are putting license plate recognition cameras everywhere we can tap into them, because I'm gonna tell you, those license plate recognition cameras, they work. And we've solved multiple crimes, multiple burglaries, multiple, you name it, we've solved them with the license plate recognition cameras. So I want everyone to know, from Jefferson Parish, Orleans Parish, when they come into Plaquemines Parish, they're all monitored. We will catch them. And I don't know if y'all ever seen the crime map. You want to talk about crime, just go look over the Woodland Bridge, look over the Belle Chasse Bridge, and you look at the crime map, and then you look in Plaquemines Parish. It comes to a stop, and it's a credit to the men and women of the Sheriff's Office here today.
Okay, next question, Mr. Tarledge will go first. Recently in the United States, there have been several mass shootings. How does a sheriff prepare for such a tragedy?
I'm glad you said that. I actually led the Joint Terrorism Task Force, so I dealt with foreign terrorists, domestic terrorism, and I was the first one ever to do vulnerability assessments at our schools. So I would go myself, along with Ryan Hebert, where's Ryan? Ryan's in the building somewhere, I'm sure. We would go do vulnerability assessment, making sure the doors are properly marked, making sure the exits are properly marked, making sure the kids know where to go, making sure the teachers know where to go. And also, how do you stop it? Because it's not just the schools, it's fairs, festivals. You monitor intelligence through our local, state, and federal partners. I have somebody on the JTTF. I also have somebody on the VICMO squad at the FBI. So that's the Violent Crime Multiple Offender Task Force. We train our school officials, partner with them to protect our children. And we actually hold active shooter training at the schools. So now our personnel knows how to respond to these incidents.
Okay, Mr. Greco, same question. Recently in the United States there have been several mass shootings. How does the sheriff prepare for such a tragedy? You have 1 minute.
Well, training is very important. I started the active shooter event when I was sheriff. And I also sent my officers to East Baton Rouge to go ahead and do the SCAT training, which is called the Special Community Anti-Crime Team. And the most important thing for mass shootings is response time is critical. Having patrol units and beats where visible at all times so they can respond even quicker wherever the crime is being committed. And it deters the crime from have mass shootings. But when it happens, fast, effective response is critical to minimizing the horrors that follow.
Okay, next question, and Mr. Greco, you'll go first this time. Do you support the governor's executive order that allows local taxing bodies to decide whether to give tax breaks to corporations that are incentives to create jobs? Sorry, the ITEP program. Do you support the ability of local agencies of government to decide on state tax exemption programs for business?
No, I mean, I'd have to look more into that. I'm not sure about that right now. I don't know how to answer that properly.
Okay, Mr. Turlidge, same question. Do you support the governor's executive order that allows local taxing bodies to decide whether to give tax breaks to corporations that are incentives to create jobs?
Absolutely, that's what y'all elect us for. So not only do I sit down with all of our taxing bodies, I can sit down with PABI. I think I have the network and the relationships with PABI who deal with business on an everyday basis. So yeah, I think that's what you guys elect us for, is to make some of those decisions, informed and a knowledgeable decision based on the information at hand. So absolutely.
Okay, we will now hear closing statements. In this case, Mr. Turlidge, you will go first, and Mr. Greco will go second. Mr. Turlidge, you have 3 minutes for your closing statement.
First off, I'm proud to say I've been endorsed by all of the regional sheriffs, and I think it was because I restored integrity to the position of sheriff. I think you can measure a sheriff on a few things. Keeping you safe, we've done that. We've had 504 of those crimes. That's unheard of down here. The managing of the finances. We are in the black first time ever without a federal disaster. Community involvement. Look, there's not another sheriff that's been involved in the community more than me. And then I'm gonna tell you, when we inherited those finances, I can't stress that enough, 100 jobs were gonna get laid off. So instead of putting biker pants on and taking a ride to Slidell or Florida, I put my business suit on and I went to Baton Rouge and I fought like hell for the men and women of the sheriff's office. And I fought for you guys because you are the taxpayers. Just think if I wouldn't have balanced the budget. Just think what would have happened in 2015. We would have been, it would have been worse than what it was. Would have had major layoffs. None of my guys would have had their benefits. Just think about my retirees. My retirees might have been paying $1,500 a month for their insurance when they've been working 30 years for a benefit, and next thing you know, we can't balance our budget. So I think we've worked very, very hard, and it's been the privilege has been mine. I hope that y'all see how hard I work. I hope y'all see how honorable me and my staff have been. I hope y'all see the integrity is restored, and I hope I have y'all vote come October 12th. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Greco, you have 3 minutes for your closing statement.
Bottom line, ladies and gentlemen, is this. He raised taxes, lowered employee medical and retirement benefits, saving $1 million, and after 3 years, put that $1 million back in the bank, calling it a surplus, off of the backs of the deputies and the citizens as a whole when he raised his taxes. What did you get in return? battered correction officers, prisoners overdosing on drugs in the prison. And because some of the inmates cannot come out anymore cutting grass on the streets, you gotta have majors, captains, and lieutenants on grass cutting duty, cutting grass. Majors, $73,000 cutting grass. A captain making $66,000 cutting grass. And a lieutenant making $56,000 cutting grass. I think we use our money better and wisely than what he's using it right now. Drug enforcement has decreased. He claims 637 drug arrests. I had over 1,200, and removing 132 known drug dealers from the streets. It's my job to remove them on the streets. It's the district attorney's office's job to go ahead and prosecute them. Visibility has decreased. I care only for one thing: providing safety and security for our families and keeping you safe. It is true, I am not a Facebook guru, and I do not go to parties. I also don't cook the crime stats, and I'm probably stand by my statistics when I was sheriff. It is really important for your choice to re-elect. Is it really important for you to re-elect a popular person looking good to be important? Or do you want a sheriff who wants a job and willing to keep you safe and your families and take care of our employees? Because when I become sheriff again, if elected, all our benefits that was taken from our deputies will be restored back to their previous levels they were before. You got a choice, ladies and gentlemen. It's your money. You can either put up or shut up. You want somebody who's proactive, who's gonna keep you safe, or you want somebody who's always willing to be at a party all the time. I ain't got nothing against the man. I like Jerry. We've been friends for a long time, and this is what had parted us, because I took care of all of my employees when I was there. I did not lay off anybody when I was there. I made sure that I was working for the best interests of them, to make sure they provided for their families. I never did mass firings. I made sure that. That was very important. But the same thing was flipped when it was time for me to run for my re-election. They didn't care about my families. I appreciate your time. We look forward for this election to continue. And all I can ask is this: just vote your conscience. The best man's gonna win. And wherever it goes, it doesn't matter. The main thing is Plaquemines Parish has to have a safe community for all. Thank you.
Okay, let's give both candidates a round of applause, please.